What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. And today we are going to be doing something that I've been looking forward to a very long time. And no, I'm not going to Strasbourg. I'm not going to Plan Spy again. No. So I'm going to start. So this video is going to be. I'm going to give you guys a basis on. I'm just gonna for the people out there that don't know a lot about planes. I'm gonna give you guys like a basic. I don't want to say like a class, but like a kind of like basis, like video talking about like the basics of airplanes, what I know. I'm showing so I'm basically showing you guys my knowledge and the easiest ways to understand airplanes in whole. So now before we get started, of course, please hit the like button, smash the subscribe button, and turn post notifications so you guys get every video I post. And also hit the like button because it really helps me out. It really supports the channel. All right, so it's not gonna be the best like basis intro to planes in the whole entire world video. I'm just going to give you guys the history of airplanes, how they first started, how they got to where they are today, and more basics on what you guys should know, like what's really important about airplanes and what makes them so important, and how it became one of the most popular modes of transportation in the whole entire world. So, I'll see you guys there. Alright guys, so I know the camera quality is a little bad, but I'm trying my best here, and I'm using my PC to film here, so it's not going to be the best camera quality in the world, but I'm trying to do my best. Alright, so first we're going to start off on, I'm basically going to do it like part 1, part 2, part 3. So the first level of understanding is basically a basis of an airplane. So, now, to a lot of people out there, a plane is just a plane. Like, it's just a plane. And for people out there that don't understand that much about planes, that's exactly what it is. And you know what? Before I kind of explored and kind of went on Google and stuff and learned more about airplanes, that's exactly what I thought too. So I know exactly what you guys are thinking right now. So, an airplane is now, for starters, like without any information, it's just a cylinder connected to wings. You got two engines on the wings. You got a tail, you got a cockpit, and that's it. That's level 1 of understanding, basically. Now, level 2 of understanding is going to be the history of planes. So here, I'm going to give you guys a basis thing here. So here's the information on the first plane that's ever been built. So the Wright brothers invented and flew the first airplane in 1903, recognized as the first sustained and controlled heavier than air-powered flight. They built on the works of George Canley, dating from 1799, when he set forth on the concept of modern airplane, and later built them few miles and flew miles and successful passenger-carrying gliders. And the work of German pioneer of human aviation, Otto Lentini, who between 1867 and 1896 also studied heavier than air flight. Lentini's flight attempts in 1891 are seen as beginning of human flight. Followed its limited use in World War I, aircraft technology continued to develop. Airplanes had a presence in all major battles of World War II. The first jet craft was the German Heinkel He 178 in 1939. The first jetliner, the D. Hammer Comet, was introduced in 1952. And now this is kind of where level 2 of understanding comes to an end. It's gonna become short. It's gonna get longer every level of understanding. So now level 3 of understanding is understanding that there are two major aircraft manufacturers companies in the U.S. so far. Now those two are, I don't know if you heard of these before, but if you know about them, then you probably know what I'm talking about. Airbus and Boeing. Now, Boeing came first. Boeing was originally was created and started becoming a company in. So Boeing was originally created and manufactured in what became a Boeing. It became a aircraft manufacturer in July 15th, 1916, and this was basically where, when Boeing was first started off, this is kind of where airplanes took a takeoff. Now, I know it sounds a little funny because airplanes take off and stuff, but this is kind of where they took off. This is kind of where airplanes really became something. And Boeing originally started creating airplanes as military aircraft. And the first ever actual passenger Boeing created, the passenger aircraft that Boeing created was actually the Boeing 707, the first widely successful commercial jet. It was in commercial service for more than 50 years, from 1958 to at least 2013. And this is actually where commercial aviation first started. And military became way before, and then like I said around probably 1952. This is kind of where commercial aviation started, technically. Now moving on to level 4. Now level 4 is kind of where we start to go into the more specifics of aircraft technology. So the next level of understanding I'm going to talk about is the engines. Oh, I forgot to mention, Airbus, the second aircraft manufacturer, let's see. Sorry for keep pausing some. Now, Airbus, on the other hand, was created in December 18th, 1970 by Bangladesh, France. Airbus was formed as a consortium in 1970 by French and German aerospace firms, later joined by Spanish and British companies, to fill a market need for short to medium range, high capacity jetliners to compete with long established American manufacturers. Its first product, the A300, entered service in 1974. So this was probably about, this is probably a couple centuries, a couple decades later, when the first Boeing commercial aircraft was created. And now, I don't know if you guys know this, but they're actually in the battle currently. In popularity, the amount of aircrafts that they produce, and yeah. So level 4 of understanding, we're going to move on to level 4 now. So level 4 of understanding is, I'm going to start talking about the engines, the power that creates the flow of air through the engine, and how exactly the engine basics work. Okay, so here we have a diagram of a turboprop engine. Now this is a engine that you'll see on like smaller aircraft, like propeller, really small planes. This is not what they use on regular airplanes that you see at airports and stuff. This is basically one of the this was the original engine that all commercial aircrafts had before the jet engine was introduced. So here we have the propeller, which is the front, and now the air intake is actually below the propeller, as you can see here. And the gearbox is basically what's turning the propeller itself, and then the air comes into the compressor, where it's compressed into kind of smaller air so it can go through the engine, and then the combustion chamber here, and then the turbine. This is basically what is powering the aircraft. And now, actually, what's interesting about airplane engines is that actually the exhaust, it's what's propelling or basically pushing the airplane and making it to move. So the combustion chamber here, it's being kind of going through, and the fuel actually, and I believe the fuel is used here in the combustion chamber, where it's mixed in the fuel, and that's used as, and then the exhaust is pushed out of the back. So that's kind of why you see sometimes sky trails in the back, because that's actually the exhaust combining or mixing together with the atmosphere and creating clouds. And we got the turbine here with combustion chamber. So this is basically a turboprop engine. This is basically what all aircraft engines, all airplanes had before the jet engine one was introduced. Now here, what we have is a turbofan engine, which is basically a jet engine in basic standards. So here we have the fan, which is the big fan that you see, that's basically the front of the engine, that's basically the part that you see. And the airflow comes in through the fan, and it goes through the compressor, kind of just like the turboprop engine, just that the fan is here, but the propeller, it's not a propeller, it's a fan. And then it goes through the fuel injectors here, where it is then converted into more powerful air, and then it's mixed, and then it goes through the combustion chamber, and then down here, and then at the very back, this is kind of the part that you sort of see. There's a very small hole, and that actually is where the air pushes out. So basically, the fuel injectors mix with the air that's being introduced into the fan, and that basically makes it more powerful air that's getting pushed out. Now, if you really think about it, it's kind of just like a car. Now, a car, though, has pistons that the air pushes up and down, and the fuel is introduced before that. And then that air turns the turbine. That's not what we're talking about. Here, it's kind of the same thing, but it's kind of cut off. You have a fuel injector, you have a combustion chamber, and then you have a turbine, and then it basically is just pushed out before it's either mixed with anything. The only thing it's mixed with is the fuel, but that's really it. So basically down here, it's also good here. You have intake, you have compression, you have combustion, and then you have the exhaust. Like I said before, the exhaust actually propels the plane through the air. So that was level 4 of understanding, and now we're going to move on to level 5. Now, I didn't say this before, but there is going to be 8 levels of understanding in this video, so just going to put that out there. And I'm going to say, I said it already, I'm going to say it again, this is not, I don't have, there is way more professionals out there that have way better videos for this stuff. But this is kind of like, if you're just looking for something basic, like you don't need to be professional or anything, this is basically the right place to go. And I really try my best with these videos, especially ones like this. But kind of just like the Strasbourg videos we had before, there's the engine of Strasbourg. I tried my best, and yeah, I got the most information, which was good. So yeah, so it's going good so far. All right, so now we're gonna move on to level 5. Now, level 5 is going to be the aerodynamics and how the plane goes up and down, altitude, and how the flaps work. And we're going to talk about all that stuff in this level 5 here. So basically, we're going to start off first thing with the fuselage. Now, basically, this holds the plane together. It carries the payload, which is basically whatever the plane's carrying. It could be cargo, it could be people. So basically, a payload is basically what's being carried. So let's say that we're flying a UPS plane. You see them around the sky. And their payload is cargo. So that's kind of why I say cargo payload, because it's a cargo payload. The payload is cargo. Now, if you're talking about commercial jetliners, like airplanes, that you see in the sky sometimes as well, their payload is passenger payload. So sometimes they'll say radios, passenger payload. So yeah, and sometimes when you have this stuff on the plane, like passengers, cargo, whatever it is, it adds weight to the plane. So that's kind of why they have like a takeoff weight, because it all depends on what's on the plane. Alright, so first, so that's fuselage. The cockpit here is basically where the pilots, captain, and the first officer fly the plane. Now, a lot of people say, I'm going to explain a lot of stuff in this level, actually. So a lot of people say that's called pilot and co-pilot. Now, that's completely fine if you want to call it that. But the actual, the official name, like the position, is captain and first officer. And if you have older planes that don't have a computer system which control the engines and stuff, and you also have an engineer, which sits kind of right behind, to the left, like there's going to be gauges and stuff, and that's kind of why you see on like older airplanes, like the B-29, and older planes like that, there's an engineer side. So, and then we're going to move a little down here to the stats. Now all these things here. Basically, the wing, the stats, this all creates lift. Now, basically, when the plane is coming into the incoming air, there's air coming against it. And you can change the direction in the way that that air is coming against your aircraft by, actually gonna keep moving on here, by the spoiler here, which is basically the flaps. Now if you put those down, then that's gonna create lift. Now that's gonna push the air down, and that's gonna pull your airplane up. So it's kind of basically the opposite of each other. So basically the oncoming air is going down, but the airplane is coming up. So that's kind of why you see, like, when the airplanes are taking off, you kind of see, or if you're sitting right out, so if you're sitting like in this area here where you could see the wings, you can actually see it happening. So when you go up into the air, these flaps here are going to be down. So that's actually generating lift, so that's pushing you up. So the air, when it's coming on, it's going to push it down, and then that air is going to bang against the ground. It's going to lift your airplane up. So that's basically the wing here. And we already talked about the turbine engine, but I might as well bring it up again. That basically generates thrust that basically pushes the airplane, basically propels the airplane through the sky. And over here, we have the horizontal stabilizer. Now, what this actually does is that this actually controls the pitch. So over here, when we have the nose, when you want to point the nose up, you would change the pitch here on the elevator, and this would pull the airplane by nose up. Now, usually when you see planes taking off, this bends down and this points up to the sky, and that's basically it taking off. So that's kind of why you see, and like I said before, like you'll see on the flaps here, and then this will kind of be a little down. And over here we have the rudder, and this basically also helps with turning. So basically when you're turning, it's basically the same concept as the flaps, but it's kind of like different. So when the air, like I said before, when the air is coming onto when it's pushing against the aircraft, it's actually, and then when it hits the rudder, when it hits the very back of the airplane, if let's say you turn the rudder to the right, so let's say this is let's say this is face to the right. So that's basically what that could do. That's going to turn the airplane right by basically moving these down. Now, and that's why the flaps don't turn the aircraft. That lifts up the aircraft only. This basically turns the aircraft here. And the vertical sterilizer control, y'all. I don't know that much. This is basically here the winglet. This is basically decreasing drag. So that's basically how much air is being pushed on. So it kind of levels it out. The aileron changes the roll. Now, basically, this is actually the aileron. It's actually part of the speed brake. Now, the speed brake is actually over here, but these also aid with the aircraft moving. And see, like I said before, the flaps increase lift and drag. Excuse me. And over here, the speed brake. Now, when you put the speed brake, when you land, you also see this as well. When you lay on the ground, the flaps are going to face up. And now actually what that's actually doing is that essentially that's actually slowing the airplane down, because the air, when they have it up like that, it's bouncing in their back, so it's not propelling like the aircraft, it's actually slowing it down. So now actually over here, when we go back to the turbine engine, this is actually a thing I did not explain yet. There's this thing called reverse thrust, and basically what that does is that also aids, and that's kind of when you see an opening in the engine. That's kind of what you could see when you land. If you've been plane spotting before, you know what I'm talking about. If you like when the plane lands and the nose gear and the main gear touch the ground, you're gonna see kind of like the opening in the engines, and that's the reverse thrust slowing the engine down. Now, and that's basically, did I miss anything? I'm pretty sure I got everything. I talked about stats. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got everything. So that's basically the basics on the aircraft itself and how it goes through the sky and how basically what airplanes do what they do. So yeah. So that was level 5 of understanding. Now that, like I said before, that was kind of like the dynamics, the aerodynamics, how everything is basically how the airplane lifts, how it descends, and all that stuff. Now level 6 is going to be altitude, like air measuring in the sky. And this is actually a very important one because when they say like cruising, so this is also a definition or like a word that a lot of them you hear pilots talk about it, captains I should say, first officers talk about it. Cruising altitude. Now cruising altitude is basically when the airplane when you go high up in the air and then you get to a point when you're so high that you just don't move anymore. And that's basically cruising altitude, when you're staying still and you're not going up or down. And that's basically where you are for probably almost half of the time, like almost most of the flight. So that's kind of like, let's say you're on a 2-hour flight, probably almost 2 hours of that flight is going to be in the air, just staying still and not moving, but you're still traveling at super high speeds. In the next, I'm gonna just, in altitude is basically the air measuring. So, you got, like, when you use a tape measure, right? And you see the feet, like how long something is. That's basically the same concept in the sky. So when you're going up, and basically in the air, it's that you're not measuring it like on the floor. You're measuring it when you measure something like my wall here. Like if you're measuring like how big it is. So like between here, I'll show you. So between where my 2 fingers are, like here, between my 2 fingers are, that's between these 2 fingers. So that's the feet. So, see, I'm gonna move my computer back here. So, when the airplane's in the sky and it takes off, then you're gaining altitude. You're getting higher and higher into the sky. So altitude is basically feet, just in fancy standardized terms. But yeah, that's altitude. And now we're gonna move on to knots. Now this is basically aeronautical miles, and this is basically how fast the plane's going. So if I pull up a graph here, we have, this is basically a translator. So when we put in knots, right? So we're gonna put in, let's say, 1 knot. So that's basically that 1.15078. That's basically 1 mile per hour. So now if we try 40 knots, or actually no, not 40, 49, 40 knots. That's gonna be 46 miles per hour. So basically add 6 to whatever is the knot. So if we do 100 knots, that's going to be 115 knots. If we do, let's say, 300 knots, it's going to be 345 miles per hour. And then 400 knots is 460 miles per hour. That's basically how the measuring of knots work. So that's knots, and it's kind of interesting, like altitude and knots, how they basically work together in figuring out how high something is in the air, how high the aircraft is in the air, and yeah. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can bring up. That's basically the measurings in the aircraft, like when you're in the cockpit. Like here, I'll show you measuring of knots work. So here, if we look over here, then this thing over here. So right here, this is basically the knots. This is the altitude, and this is the knots. So it's kind of like I said, it kind of works together. And here we actually have basically a graph of how high. So let's say, when this line here, when this dot is in blue, that means that you're in the sky, right? And when this dot kind of goes to this represents ground. So when you're landing, it's gonna kind of go in the middle because you're not high, and you're not in the sky. It's kind of gonna point, like, kind of representing that you're on the ground. So level 7 understanding is kind of one of the more, and now it's kind of a little higher and higher. And now this one is sometimes a little hard for people to understand. So what I'm saying when I'm like talking about on my plane spotting video, for example, like Airbus A330, like Airbus A320, Boeing 737, those are those type of aircrafts I'm talking about. And now we're going to talk about basically what I'm about to say is how you can this is kind of like tips how you can tell what is what. So, like, how can you tell it's a Boeing airplane? How you can tell it's an Airbus aircraft? And yeah, so stuff like that. So, actually, it's actually pretty. And when you really think about it, when like for people like me, it's really easy to tell. But sometimes for like people who know not that much about airplanes at all, it's pretty difficult. So, this is what basically I said. So my time will say again. This is basically what this video is for. Anyway, back to the point. So, Airbus planes actually have a flat nose. Like I'll show you. Like I showed you in the diagram. The nose was kind of flat, and when you think about that, so like in the diagram I showed you guys earlier, the nose was flat. So that would basically indicate that it's an Airbus aircraft. And when you're talking about Boeing aircraft, the nose is actually pointed. So here I'll show you guys. Basically, when you really think about it, all noses of airplanes kind of look different. And also another thing I wanted to bring up as level 7 of understanding is, so first I'm basically gonna split this into 3 sections. So first, here we have first class. This is basically for business people, people that want to have a pleasures experience and are very, and I don't want to say rich and wealthy. I want to say they have a lot of money that they can be able to do these things. Like YouTubers sometimes do this, like Mr. Beast, like Creekcraft, and all these people. They would probably, and I would say most likely, but I'm not saying that they will. But people like Mr. Beast, I think, would fly first class in any airplane. So this is basically first class. And first class here, as you can see, has a TV. It has a reclining seat. They also, when you actually walk onto the airplane, they'll come on with a hot towel. Also with a blanket and a pillow. And that's basically first class. And actually, I think what's really interesting about first class is that actually first class is actually being faded out. Like, it's slowly being faded out, because business class, which I'm going to move on to next, is basically taking control of first class in a whole. So, and now let's move, and now that actually brings us into actually business class. Okay, so here we have business class. And kind of business class, in my opinion, this looks actually better than first class. Like, the one that, the original here, the thing that I showed here, this is first class, and this is business class. Like, do you see a difference? Like, doesn't this look more, like, downgraded than this? Like, first class is meant to be, like, the most fanciest one. And then you have business class here, and it looks even better. Like, you have closable, you could close yourself in your little pod here. You have Wi-Fi, you got reading lamps, you got super comfy seats, you got TVs behind this. Like, it's very confusing to me that they would have this. And I know I'm actually very, like, kind of, like, argumentative about this, but in my opinion, I think that slowly first class is being taken over by business class, very slowly. So, back to the main point. So here we have business class. In total here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 19 seats in this business class here. And business class is kind of in the middle of the plane. Now that's kind of why, when we move on to economy, I'll show you guys, like, it's kind of in the back of the plane. Now, if you get lucky, then sometimes they'll have it where first class and business class are kind of smushed together, and then economy class takes up the middle and the back of the plane. So sometimes you'll get lucky. Like, sometimes I went on a trip to Florida. I'm pretty sure I have that video. It's pretty old, but I had the wing view, so I could see the wing. It was basically in the middle. So yeah. So now we're gonna move on to economy class. Yeah. So here we have economy class. Now economy class is so much bigger than first class and business class because it's one of the most popular. Like, most people, I bet you most people have the total population of people that fly planes fly economy. Because people like my family and stuff, they want to be able to fly a plane and save money and not have to spend huge amount of money just because you want to fly on a plane. So that's what economy class is for. So here in this economy class, it's kind of split into a 3-3 configuration. You have 3 seats over here, you have 3 seats here, and then you have 3 seats here. And a lot of planes actually just had this middle row doesn't really exist. It's just these 2 rows. Now a lot of like airplanes, like American Airlines, Spirit Airlines, all the low cost like most of airlines have it in a 2-2 configuration. And back there they have, I think, and it's still 3-3 back there as well. Economy is kind of like a normal like pleasures experience where there's not much. You got what you need. You have a seat. You have a adjustable headrest. It's everything that you need, just regular like basics. And it all depends on. And sometimes economy seats have TVs. It all depends on how an airline, Pacific Airline, does it. But most of the time, there's no TVs on economy seats. Now, yes, like most of the time, you'll see. I think in total, I think all business class and first class seats have TVs. If not, like a very small portion, though. So, yeah. Alright guys, so that's gonna do it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please hit the like button, smash subscribe button, and turn post notifications so you guys see any videos I post. And also hit the like button because it really helps me out if you support the channel. Unfortunately I couldn't get a level 8 in. I was trying to come up with ideas and I couldn't get anything. I pretty covered it all in 7 levels. So yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.